During the May shooting at the STEM school in Highlands Ranch, an on-duty private guard shot and wounded an uninvolved student while accidentally firing at a responding sheriff's deputy. The Colorado Sun learned this week that the school forbids guards to carry guns on school property and did not know the guard was armed. Marie, how we're handling violence in schools, whether it be armed guards in schools or private security or arming teachers, the conversation's only going to grow. But from what we learned this week, what do you think that adds or detracts from the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, did you see yesterday's front page of the Denver Post? It was a story of students being trained to tackle an active shooter. I had it just sitting on my counter all day, wondering what if it was like when I was in school and I was taught to tackle an active shooter. I can't process that. And I think our takeaway from all of this should be the only thing we should be tackling is common sense gun legislation. Guns don't belong in schools, not anywhere. To anyone who thinks putting guns in the hands of civilians at school is going to solve the problem, I think this showed us it won't. Let's leave emergency response to our emergency officials, and let's get our Senator Cory Gardner to join up with other Republicans in the Senate and finally get some gun legislation done.
Patty, what do you think about the impact of the events of what's going on in Douglas County? There's been issues between the charter school and the district said, well, if you're going to arm teachers, you can't be a charter school, then they're going to leave the district, and a lot of different angles to this. Is that going to lead to more conversations in other districts that with even more students? Douglas County's, there's plenty of students there, but Jefferson County, Denver Public Schools, there's a lot of big districts around there that have yet to have these kind of debates.
I don't think there is a school district in Colorado that isn't thinking about this, given what's happened. And kudos to Jesse Paul from the Colorado Sun, who did a great job getting this information out there. And we do have to look to national. What is going to happen? Let's remember the last two big shootings, and sadly we know there will be more. They weren't in schools. Dayton, El Paso, those were not school shootings. Those were shootings we were supposed to get such response from out of D.C. with immediately. And of course, now we have Trump backing off maybe on supporting red flag legislation. We've got Congress coming back early next month, and we'll see if anyone is really serious about doing something. But I think the will is there now for more on background checks, more on red flag legislation. We've had David Kopel at this table, has even been advising Congress. So we'll see if we're able to come up with some common sense. But it can't be piecemeal, because as we've discovered with all these shootings, there's so many different factors involved.
Erica, again, with your work at Chalk Beat, Colorado, what are some of the background issues with schools and the districts and all the conversations back and forth that we need to know about this issue?
Well, there's a lot of debate right now. There's a interim committee that's been convened to try and work on school safety issues, and it's covering a lot of issues. It's actually steering clear of the gun issue largely and talking about threat assessment and sharing information and better mental health resources. And I think, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we don't actually, I think everyone would like to know, like, this is the thing we're going to do, and this is what's going to make our schools safe, and we don't really know. We don't have, if it's arming teachers, there's potential for a lot of things to go wrong. If no one's armed and there's a slow emergency response, that's not good either. No one really knows what the thing is. I do think something to keep in mind is that these events still are relatively rare, and that by many metrics, our schools are actually safer today than they have been in decades.
Michael, what do you think this is going to do? I mean, it's a difficult challenge for if there were no politics involved, but we live in a very political society, and we're about to come into a very political year in 2020. Do you see any real action on the horizon on any side of this that can provide any sort of change?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, all these shootings come up, and then there's talk, and then there's not, and then back and forth. I don't know if anything actually comes of it. I think you have to look at each situation and figure out what happened here, what could have gone better, what went well. And I think in this case, if the guard wasn't supposed to have a gun, he shouldn't have had a gun on one hand. But he did stop one of the shooters and then fired, and it went through several walls and hit a kid. I think there has to be talk about if you're going to have armed security guards in an area, what kind of bullets are they using that can go through multiple walls in order to hit somebody in a school situation? So I think there's like practical things that you can look at it and say, look, this was a good thing. One of the shooters was stopped by this. Then a kid got injured. That is horrible. It has to be a learning experience in a lot of ways. And so I'm somebody who I want trained security guards that are armed to protect our kids, but they have to do it the right way. And so I think this is an ongoing discussion, but we can learn from each one of these circumstances.